Welcome to the Church Answers podcast. My name is Jess Rayner. I'm here with my father, my second favorite parent,
There you
Thom
go.
Rayner.
I wish your mother's in the house. She should have heard that.
Well, I'll remind her, and I'll continue to remind you as well. It's always great that we get to come along and do some podcasts. I gotta say, I'm excited about all of our podcasts, but today maybe a little bit extra excitement than we normally do, because today we're going to be answering listener questions. We often talk about here at Church Answers. We love being able to answer questions about churches and church life and church leadership. And so today we're going to be doing that. That's exactly what we're up to do today. But before we get started, we do want to thank our sponsor for this podcast, Chaney and Associates. Actually just got off a Zoom call today with one of the employees, Chris from Chaney Associates, and just had a great call with him today. And so it was such,
That's great.
that's such a great team over there. He actually is was doing some analysis for us as a church from a financial and bookkeeping perspective, and the wealth of information they have and the knowledge that they have and the wisdom they have was absolutely fascinating. And so they're beginning to ask some questions about our finances here at my church, and even got down to some nitty gritty like volunteers during this call, like how we can help volunteers. It had nothing to do with the scope of bookkeeping and accounting, but all I have to say is if you have any financial needs for your church, bookkeeping, any type of financial needs, give Chaney Associates a call. They are all about making sure they're taking work off of church leaders so that they can function and do things more efficiently than they've ever done before. And so highly encourage you to check out Chaney and Associates.
And Jess, you brought up a point that is worth reiterating. Call them, or at least set up an appointment with them,
Yeah.
because they're going to talk through things, and you're going to learn so much from the conversation. It is a no financial commitment conversation, but
Mm-hmm.
call them, and you will probably be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
That's what we hear again and again.
Even with that first call, I walked away some ways I could better lead our volunteers that are part of our finance team, and that was just part of the discussion. So that was worth it. So yeah, absolutely, get a call set up with Chain Associates if you have any questions about your church finances and bookkeeping. I know they would love to have a conversation with you. But today is about answering questions, and is about particularly answering listener questions. And so I love this. I'm excited about this one. And it's going to be a two-part. We're going to cover 5 questions in this first episode, and then we'll follow up with 5 more questions. And we got some ones that maybe you're expecting, some ones maybe you're not expecting. And so I think we should just kind of kick it off here with this first one. You ready?
No, I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not.
Okay. You need a moment?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I just want to let our audience know where we've been digging for these questions. Some of them,
Okay.
of course, it's not just we call it podcast or listener questions, but it's really all over Church Answers. We're getting questions by the day, usually by the hour. They can come from, there's an info form that people fill out. There's a consultation form to fill out. Church Answers has 2,000 people that are interacting with one another all the time. And so I can pull from anywhere. These were some of my favorites that I pulled. So I just want to be clear. You can always ask a question on this podcast, but we're going to get a lot of other questions coming through as well.
That's right. Yeah. And these are, listener questions. These are Church Answers connections. You gathered them from all over different places, but these are questions that we have received at Church Answers. And
recently, for the most part.
Yeah. And so we're taking a few moments to answer these today. So now that you had your moment, are you ready?
I am now ready. I feel like I have fulfilled my obligation. I'm going to go double mute and just let you handle it.
Double mute? How does that work?
That means you turn off your video and you turn off your audio.
Okay, that's not double mute, but yeah, that's that'd be get rid of one visual and audio. Anyway, let's get into this first question. Here's a question we received from someone here at Church Answers, and the question is this: should
I just remember the reaction I had from this. This one came in as a consultation request.
Right.
I'm sorry.
And here we're going to answer it. So it's, we're doing a on the spot consultation. Here we go. The question is this: should I lead the elders to fire our pastor, who is also my brother-in-law? That's the question. Should I lead the elders to fire a pastor who's also my brother-in-law? Now, do you know, without giving away specifics, the obviously brother-in-law? So this was a man's sister's husband. Is that the
Jess, I'm going to try to remember what it was. Another one of our team members, Brad, actually responded. I thought Brad would be a good one for complex and conflict. He usually either helps in the conflict or he creates the conflict. So I knew that it would be one of the two. As I recall it, it was his wife's brother.
his wife's brother? Okay.
The,
Okay.
and they're both elders, the pastor and the brother, or the brother-in-law. And there is a third family member, and then I think there are two non-family members. So it is truly a family church.
Family church. Okay. Yeah, this question immediately requires way more context. I think there's an instant like no, but there's like, well, let's dig a little bit deeper with this question. Do you know any more of the situation that was taking place?
I know one or two other pieces, and I fear that if I give those other two
Sure.
pieces, I will have all of a sudden given away the church.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
I want to be
Okay.
very careful to protect our. This isn't even a church answers customer; it was an inquiry.
Right. Yeah, again, I respect that confidentiality as well. But if I was asked that question from a consultation request, I'd be like, I need more information. So what's your initial response to this question?
Do we have a relational problem? And the answer is obviously yes. And the relational problem may be between the elder that wants to fire the pastor because he's going to fire his wife's brother.
Mm-hmm.
That that may be part of the problem. And is there a precipitating factor that is beyond relational issues? And here, I can tell you this much. I can tell you this much. As we begin to dig into it, here's what we found. The basic problem is a difference in leadership philosophy,
Hmm.
and particularly how to lead a church to growth,
Okay.
which I don't think this church was growing. And so the knee jerk reaction of the inquirer was, let's get rid of him.
Right.
And obviously, our response was one of this ilk. Look, this is much more than what you're just asking. This is a relational issue. You
It
need to
is.
go through a lot of layers. We are not equipped to tell you the layers to go through,
Mm-hmm.
but there are relational issues here. There are church issues here. There are leadership issues here. There are polity issues here. I said, you need a lot more guidance than just saying, should we fire someone? That was the bottom line. You
Yeah.
need to go find someone, and preferably if you could find someone in your community that may be not necessarily a part of the church, but knowledgeable person
Mm-hmm.
to walk alongside. Those are the type things we told them. But again, we declined doing a consultation because we knew it wasn't a consultation.
Right.
Uh, we knew that this was some type of singular problem that somebody else needed to answer other than church answers on the outside, somebody who was closer to the scene on the inside or near the inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And my initial reaction was this is like, no, you don't. You don't need to be the one to lead. And honestly, you probably need to step out of the situation. Um,
Yep.
that would be something where you as a family member need to remove yourself from that. And because you're talking about the way the enemy works,
Oh yeah.
if the enemy can get a 2-for-1, hey, I'm going to disrupt this church and I'm going to disrupt this family in ministry or these families in ministry. It sounds like even more than a 2-for-1. It sounds like a 3-for-1 or a 4-for-1.
For one, possibly. Yeah.
This is clearly the enemy trying to get some work. And so I would think if you're that passionate about the situation, it's best just to step out of it in order to keep the relational between the family members, to keep that relational values there.
Yep.
I would absolutely say no, you should not lead, nor should you be a part of that process.
And I'll say this at the risk of being too judgmental, but I got the impression in the context of the conversation, church answers was going to be used as one of the weapons.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
we need,
again, if you're a consultant, that's always something you got to be, mindful of.
right.
You can find yourself sometimes in the middle of a feud and you're being used.
Yep.
Um, and that's not always a good thing. So it does bring up a secondary question. I want to ask you, is it good to have family members on a church elder team, a church board team? Um, is it ever good to have family members together in those situations?
Ever is a strong statement to make at any time,
Sure.
but I sure will make a general statement. It's something that, unless there's an extraordinary reason, I think it should be avoided having family members on the board.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been at the Church of Spring Hill for almost since the very beginning.
Right.
It took you a little bit to come around.
No,
Um,
your mom.
a few months. A few months. It took you. Mom's my
She was
CEO.
waiting on, she was waiting on me, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I've never asked you to step in any type of leadership role.
Right.
The highest leadership role you've taken is a community group leader
That's right.
at the Church of Spring Hill. You've never served as a director, which is our directors are the ones who lead our ministries.
Right.
You've never served as an elder, which are
Right.
those who shepherd and lead our church. Uh, the conversation has come up at some point along the way. Should my dad be an elder? Um,
Oh,
that's
you
pretty.
mean not me, but with others.
Yeah, yeah. Just in years past, anytime the God has laid on our elder team of like, who is there someone out there? Do we feel like God's leading it? And it's always kind of like, what about your dad? I'm like, no, no, we're good.
I
We're
to I totally agree with that. And if you were to do something that stupid, you would get an immediate no from me as well.
right, right, right.
And
So this,
I would not expect it from you. And to be fair about the overall, it is self-serving for me to say no because it is a fun thing to do,
mm,
not to, to serve and not to be in the decision-making type of position that often is comes with either director, elders, deacons, whatever the case may be.
right, yeah. So yeah, if you're listening to this one and maybe just the question caught your attention, like it caught our attention. The underlying factor is you got to think about who you're placing in your leadership team, and you got to be very mindful of family members. I mean, I don't know if we have time to go one layer deeper, but it even then goes to what about staff? And that there are a lot of churches that do that, where there is, a father son on staff together, where the father's the lead pastor, the son is a worship pastor or a teaching pastor. That does seem to work a little bit better
Right.
than an elder team or a board of some sort. But there's caution to that.
Yep. That's why I said I would never say never to your question, should we ever? Never say never to the question, should we ever? But right now, I cannot think of an exception. So
Right.
certainly not in our church, yes.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, that was our first question. Again, we're calling these listener questions, but they're really church answer questions that we've received from a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. Second question that we're going to ask, or that we're going to answer, that was asked of us, is this: I am leading my church in revitalization. How much should I focus on members' internal spiritual growth compared to evangelism? And I've heard this question a lot. I've heard it asked in different ways in different forms.
Hmm.
Obviously, I get the chance to work with those who are going through the certification in church revitalization, and this is often a question I hear. What do I go after first? Do I go after internal spiritual growth? Do I go after evangelism? What do I do? And I think this is becoming a way more of a topic, and I'm glad it's being asked.
It
Not
is
enough people are asking the question, but it's being asked. What do I go after first? If I'm revitalizing a church, do I go after the internal spiritual growth, or do I go after evangelism? What are your thoughts?
I think the question could be akin to this question: should I breathe or should I eat?
Mm,
And I'm not being flippant, but here's the thing about it is when someone focuses upon evangelism, they are going to have internal spiritual growth.
sure.
If someone is not focusing on evangelism, they're not going to have internal spiritual growth. The first command before he ascended to heaven was, "And you will be my witnesses." So his last will and testament, Jesus said, you are to do evangelism.
Hmm.
Now, he obviously didn't say, but neglect my word, neglect talking to my Father, neglect all those things that can bring you spiritual growth. These are one of those dichotomies, I think, that can be hurtful to not only a revitalizing church, but can be hurtful to any church, where we think we are choosing between two mandates that our God has given us the capacity to do both of them
Hmm.
as a part of the ministry of our church. And
Yep.
so when you segregate these two, sometimes we hear it in the area of discipleship versus evangelism.
Hmm.
And so I don't even know how people decide to define discipleship these days. That's another question for another time. But I always say both. And you're not going to grow spiritually if you're not doing evangelism, and the church is not going to be healthy if it's not doing evangelism.
Yeah. Yeah. You use a breathing versus eating analogy. I'll use a walking analogy. You know, you have two legs. You got to use both. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't use both. But I will say, I do believe you have to take a first step. Um, and I think that's sometimes, some people want to just do a one-legged race. Do I go after 12 months after one of these? Well, I still think, though, there is a first step, and I'm a big proponent of heart revitalization first.
Hmm.
And so if you're thinking, all right, I'll go after both, but I at least got to do one first. Like, what's my first step? I tend to lead towards, you got to get your people, get their heart fired up again. And the way that starts, often, if you're a church leader, you're a pastor, it starts with you. So in a roundabout way, if you want to get your church people excited about evangelism, you have to get them spiritually ignited again. And the way you do that is by you going after evangelism. So you go and share the gospel,
Hmm.
and then report it back to your church, and
Yep.
let that spiritual flame start to ignite again and develop that spiritual growth and that spiritual heart, then lead them towards them going out and sharing. So I've often said heart revitalization leads to evangelism revitalization, which leads to church revitalization.
I
um,
don't disagree, but I will simply say I know a lot of people and leaders who say they're doing heart revitalization, and many times I do not see it leading to evangelism. Okay, they're probably doing heart revitalization wrong, or they're defining it wrong. But
sure.
I know some people who want to grow spiritually all of their lives without telling anyone about Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, but as long as you understand that, hey, you have to have both. But I'm saying,
Yes,
if you had to start with one, if you had to take a first step, I would lean towards, let's get you fired up first, but we can't ignore the second step. So I think a lot of people take that first step and they just want to stay down that lane. And
that
so
we
having that
created,
understanding, then I say start with heart revitalization first.
we created the Hope Initiative to go down two tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting your heart right with God through prayer, helping the culture of the church shift
Hmm.
toward outward through this. And that's why we say that 30 days is a kickstart toward prayer and evangelism.
Yeah.
The book we use is called Pray and Go,
Yeah.
not Pray and Stay.
Right. Yeah. But I think in that book, it is weighted more towards getting your heart fired up first.
It is. It's
So
about
and,
creating
and
the
that's
culture.
all I'm saying. Like, don't use my words as a way of, like, well, I'm going to spend the next 2 years focusing just on heart revitalization. No, you gotta do both, but a first step would be heart revitalization.
And I gave the story recently of a church consultation of some time ago where they said they were going to go deeper. They were going to be a deeper church, and that would result in all kind of fruit. And after 23 years, the pastor said, the church has gone from 350 to 48.
Mm,
It's time. It's probably time for us to find someone else. My plan didn't work. No,
yeah.
no, it's going deep. It's sometimes as a cop out toward doing the hard stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think we're making it clear that you have to do both. My whole point was, if you're looking to take a first step, then um, get them fired up and do it by doing evangelism. Get them fired up about evangelism before you send them on evangelism. Let's look at the third question here. We got a question that was presented to Church Answers, and is this: what are the trends in streaming services for churches? We're kind of bouncing around here. We've gone through a leadership question. We're going through a revitalization question.
We're bouncing all over the place with these. And I picked them in some ways of an eclectic fashion, and we'll have 5 in the next podcast as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're all kind of fun, but they are different.
They are
Definitely.
different. So we're shifting gears here. This one is talking about streaming services for churches. And no doubt 2020 brought a ton of change in
Right.
this. Maybe you can just do a quick, pre 2020, from 2020 to date, and then what's ahead. So
Pre 2020 streaming services were infrequent, usually in the purview of newer churches or larger churches. I would say in those two groups,
yep.
very few of the older established churches were doing it. So it was not a thing in most churches. 2020 hits and everybody's streaming. I remember the pastor who had 22 people in his church, and he announced that he was a mega church pastor right after his first streaming service. I don't know where the people came from, but he had over 2,000 that first Sunday there. So
Okay.
there's a line of demarcation, definitely with COVID and people in the stay-at-home church. So where did it go? It continued down a path of plateau of about a month to 2 months, depending upon when the people regathered. Okay, and once they regathered, there began to be overall waning of streaming attendance.
Mm-hmm.
And some churches have abandoned it altogether, so people aren't there anymore. Some churches have gone all in. Low Country is one example, a church in South Carolina that has 2,300 in-person attendance and 2,000 in streaming attendance. They do not count their streaming toward the total, but they're highly intentional about reaching their community through the streaming services.
Yeah.
They're the outlier. So we know that streaming is decreasing precipitously, but I am not an advocate to do away with streaming because I think it really holds a purpose. So is that enough? You want more background?
No, I think it's great. The only thing I would add to that is, regardless if you live stream or you upload a stream, you need to have some kind of stream.
Yes, fair
and,
enough.
And that, to me, that's the trend is not necessarily what churches are doing. The trend is what guests are looking for. If I could say what the expectation now, the expectation used to be you had a website.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't have a website, I'm not going to go. Well, now first-time guests are, if you don't have a website, they're not even going to think about a church. But if you don't have any type of service to show them before they come, you're potentially losing first-time guests. And so if I could say there's a trend, it's about the guests and their expectations, is that they are looking for a stream of some sort.
Yep.
That's it. Doesn't have to be live. That does take doing live mixing for audio. A lot of things that I know we do here at the Church of Spring Hill. In fact, I just walked into our worship space and there's 2 new cameras hanging up on the walls. So I don't know what they're doing over there. They got this joystick thing that's happening. I'm like, okay, I love it. They're having fun. So who knows what our live stream is going to look like in the coming months, but it's for the guest. It's absolutely for the guest. So it's about getting those guests. It's about reaching out, and I think it's a good time just a reminder that we partner with an organization that is all about reaching the community and reaching guests. Upward Sports, they do a tremendous job of making sure you as a church reach your community. Dad, I know you've partnered with them in a lot of different ways. We'd love to thank them about this midway point. I guess we're a little over midway point, but quick words about Upward.
Well, as I'm speaking, I will be doing a webinar for them. We're recording this on what's today, a Thursday?
Today's a Wednesday.
Today is when we're recording this. The Retired Man Speaks. We're recording this on a Wednesday, and I will be doing the webinar for them on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Our relationship with them has really begun to get close, and it's basically one of the sections of my presentation is why I'm ignorant and why I am an idiot. In this presentation.
How long of a webinar is this? 3 hours?
Oh gosh, that was such a softball.
Oh man.
The ignorance was I did not dig into Upward enough to see what they were really doing until I happened to do a number of consultations and it just kept popping up. Oh yeah, we do upward, we do upward. So
Hmm.
that was the ignorance. The idiocy was upward was around when I was a pastor. They've been around a long time, and I didn't use them.
Hmm.
Didn't even look at them. But anyway, great place. They do sports ministry of all kinds. What they basically do is bring the community to you. So I just say contact upward.org. Great organization.
Yeah, upward.org/church answers. Go check them out there. They do a lot of different things from basketball, cheerleading, soccer, flag football, volleyball, baseball. They do a running for adults now.
Your brother, your brother.
Yeah, he just ran a 50 miler. He's
Yeah, and with 3 bonus miles on it. 53.
absolutely crazy.
You
So
talk about idiots.
don't think that you don't have the space or capacity. You'd be surprised what they can do with whatever facility you have. So go check them out. Upward Sports. I'm sorry, not Upward Sports. Upward.org/church answers. All right. So we've done 3 questions so far. We got probably here time very quickly to do 2 more. Again, we're kind of bouncing around. We talk about leadership. We talk about revitalization. We're talking about a trend in streaming with your services. Our 4th question that we received is, what should be my priority in the order of hiring staff?
Where this comes from, Jess, is largely denominations.
Okay.
United Methodist, Southern Baptist, the old Presbyterian Church USA, some of the mainline, where they basically had a programmatic approach to ministry. And each of those programs had a staff person. So you had worship, and Southern Baptist Life, you had education, you had then youth. And if you had was growing enough, you may expand that to preschool or children's area. But they had a decided area order based upon the denominational programs.
Mm-hmm.
It has changed,
Right.
and it has changed dramatically. And when we get this question, I always say it is so contextual. We need
Right.
to know what you and your community says you need. There
Mm-hmm.
should not be an outside force saying, okay, here's the right order without any context whatsoever.
Right.
So I would say get with somebody that knows your church, get with a consultant, get with someone and say, hey, based upon my church, what do I need?
Right.
Like if your church did not have someone, our church, yes, the Church of Spring Hill, investing in children in preschool and students for that matter, we'd be missing the boat.
And worship. So we're in a suburb of Nashville.
Yeah,
There is an expectation for quality worship and an expectation for quality kids and student ministry.
right.
And so for us, you know, those are non-negotiables. I mean, you can just go down to the local restaurant and hear amazing music on a Thursday night. And so
That's, that's right. And you can go to a coffee shop and as you're providing the tip, ask them what their instrument is, and they'll tell you.
right, right. And so I mean, you don't have to have, this over the top, but there's definitely a quality. And so that just whatever context you're in, I'm in a young, family oriented, music driven community. And so those are the things that have to go well.
Right.
And I've always said, the areas that you need the most accountability are the areas you need to hire in. And you don't always have to hire full time, part time,
Exactly.
part time. I
That's,
mean,
that's another answer to the question. That priority does not mean that you're hiring full time going down the line of priority.
yeah. So we've had at times more than one full time staff at our church, but I'm only full time staff, and I have 6 part timers, and they are all focused on their individual ministries. And I found that you often can get a lot more out of one part time staff focused on doing one ministry than one full time staff doing multiple ministries.
Totally
Uh,
agree.
and so
The model is shifting.
yeah,
Totally agree.
so don't obviously there's pros and cons to both, but don't think you can't hire that way. So that was our 4th question: priority in the order of hiring staff, which brings us to our 5th and final question of these 2 episodes that we're doing, focusing on listener questions. The last question we're going to cover in this episode is this: how are churches deciding to fund organizations outside the church? You really just all over the place with these questions.
Yep. Yep. Actually, this was a coaching call with a great pastor, Mark McCarter.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of his questions
Yep.
because they are going heavily into mainly not societal giving, but into individual mission groups. So you've got these big categories. You got fund them through a big source and let the big source to take care of it, like a denominational funding,
Right.
or the church decides individually. Here's the simple rule, since we're almost out of time here, but here's the simple rule that I would say. If you decide to start going heavily into funding outside the church, have someone set up standards, a checklist of the type of questions you would have, and have someone who is the leader in that area, even if they're only given 2 or 3 hours a week, a specific leader, because you can lose funds. I don't know if you've heard, but there's some things going on where they're discovering where government money's been going lately. Well, on a smaller scale, it can happen in the church. That we heard from Cheney where he went to a church and found thousands of dollars that they didn't know they had. Again, make certain you got someone checking on these, leading it, and having at least an annual checkup.
So you're saying if you as a church decide to give to an individual organization, there should be someone on your church staff that is doing a review with this organization. Uh,
Right.
okay, to keep up with the funds. Um, I would say if you're not doing that, you don't need to be giving to them. Because I know we give cooperatively, but we also give individually at my church, and every individual organization that we give to, we have regular conversations with them. I mean, regular conversations with them, but they're also more apt to reach out. I hear way more from our individual organizations than I do from any type of cooperative organization that I hear from. And so I
That's
get it.
important.
I get a ton more updates. So if you're not getting any updates and having any communication with the individual mission organization or funding outside organization, I'd be very mindful of that. But yes, I do agree with you on that. One other piece that I would add just for that, if you're choosing to give to individual funds, it has to align with your vision as a church. It has to connect with the hearts. And here's what the cool thing is: you typically those organizations love to come into your church. They love to tell stories. They love to tell stats. They love to come and connect. And so you might find a lot of fruit from those relationships as
Right.
long as it's aligning with your vision. Again, it's how to decide because you're gonna have a lot of individual people say, "Hey, let's give to this organization. Let's give to this organization. Why don't we help them?" It needs to funnel through your vision, mission, whatever you have. And so that's an easy way of saying to someone who asks in your church, "Hey, that's a great idea. Here's our vision and mission. Here's why we give to certain organizations." That doesn't necessarily fall within it. It's a great organization, so it gives you a way to have those conversations. And sometimes it doesn't always work out with that.
Which brings up this point. If you have someone that is really looking after your finances, it can really help you with these organizations because they're going to keep track of them. They're going to be very precise.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're designated funds or taken out of a general budget, they're going to tell you exactly how it's going. And if you want the best in accounting, if you want the best in bookkeeping, if you want the best organization that has only churches as its client,
Mm-hmm.
1,100 of them, that's Cheney and Associates.
That's
So
it.
that's just one way that you can use them.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're thinking you need someone to review your books, reach out to Cheney and Associates. Go to cheneyassociates.com/church answers. Let them know that we sent you and that you need to learn more and you need to have a conversation with them because you heard about it on the Church Answers podcast. So
Yeah,
thanks so much for being here today. I enjoyed these. We went through 5 of them. That felt super fast.
it
Um,
was fast.
but here's the good news. We got 5 more coming, and we're going to record another episode and get this out there and answer more of these questions that you guys have asked of Church Answers. So thanks so much for being here today. Thanks for listening. Whatever app you're on, whatever service you're on listening to this podcast, make sure you hit the like button. Give us a thanks. Comment, let us know all the things that you normally hear when you listen to podcasts. We'd love for you to do that here at Church Answers because that's what we're here for. We're here to interact with you, and we're here to answer your questions. That's why we call it Church Answers. Thanks so much. We'll see you on the next episode.